everybody, welcome back to another video by Dissociated. This is going to be another Debunking DID video about the differences between dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia. We get a lot of comments, and have done in the past especially, about whether DID is the same as schizophrenia, whether it's the same illness with a different name, whether they're similar or very, very different. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that dissociative identity disorder, which was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, is a psychotic illness in the same way that schizophrenia is. This is not true. Dissociative identity disorder is not a psychotic illness, but schizophrenia is. Some symptoms of schizophrenia being a psychotic illness is that it often comes with symptoms like hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, disorganized speech and disorganized thought patterns, disorganized movements as well, and withdrawal from society. It has absolutely nothing to do with dissociative identity disorder or having multiple personalities or alters in any way, shape or form. People with dissociative identity disorder are not delusional, and they're not hallucinating having their alters, and that's one thing that's a very big difference between schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, is that with schizophrenia often symptoms involve hearing or seeing things that aren't really there in the physical world. They're hallucinations and delusions. But with dissociative identity disorder, the voices that people with this disorder have are in some sense real. Obviously they're not real in the external world, but they're not having delusions of having multiple people taking over their body. This is an actual thing that happens due to a defense mechanism in the brain to protect from trauma. It's all about amnesic walls and having different personality states, different memories, being separated by memory loss in order to allow the individual to live a somewhat normal, healthy life without being burdened by memory of the trauma in childhood, which causes DID to develop. So while people with dissociative identity disorder may have symptoms that are related to or similar to psychosis in terms of hearing voices, for example, dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia are very, very different illnesses. One thing that is similar though between people who suffer from schizophrenia and people who have dissociative identity disorder, both of those illnesses come with a very big stigma attached by society's views on what an individual must be like if they have these disorders. One stigma that is very, very common surrounding both of these disorders is that they must be dangerous or are more likely to be criminals than any other member of the population. When it comes to both of these illnesses, that is not true at all. People with dissociative identity disorder and people with schizophrenia are no less likely and no more likely to commit a crime or be violent than any other person that you may meet walking down the street, regardless of whether they have a mental illness or not. In fact, both people with schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder are more likely to be victims of abuse. Another thing that's similar between schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder is that it can't be cured with exercise or healthy eating or willing it away. You can't just say to someone who's experienced a delusion or a hallucination and say, it's not real, you know it's not real, you're making it up, deal with it, get over it. Treatment for dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia requires evidence-based therapy being given by a professional. So, as I said, schizophrenia is a very different disorder from dissociative identity disorder, but people with dissociative identity disorder can also have experiences with symptoms of psychosis, and psychosis is a very big part of schizophrenia. Psychotic symptoms include delusions. Delusions are false beliefs that can't be changed by evidence. Hallucinations. Hallucinations are hearing or sensing voices that aren't real or aren't really there. This can be things other than just voices, so you could see things that aren't really there, hear things, feel things that aren't really there. And hallucinations are a symptom that can come with dissociative identity disorder, but are very, very integral to a diagnosis of schizophrenia. So somebody with DID may or may not suffer from hallucinations, but somebody with schizophrenia will definitely suffer from hallucinations. Disordered thinking, so muddled thoughts, confused speech patterns, movements that are disorganized, thought processes that can be easily interrupted. Because people with DID do exhibit symptoms that sound like this, it's not a psychotic symptom. The reason that a lot of people with dissociative identity disorder can struggle to keep a train of thought and may have slightly muddled speech is because they're dissociating. And dissociation is something that is integral to a diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder, hence the name dissociative identity disorder. So in people with DID, that's not a psychotic symptom, but it is a symptom of psychosis for people with schizophrenia. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's right, but I mean, yeah, don't hesitate to educate me if I am wrong, because I don't want to be putting any incorrect information out there, but to the best of my knowledge, that's accurate. However, despite having a lot of psychotic symptoms, schizophrenia can involve symptoms that also aren't psychotic. So non-psychotic symptoms can include things like losing the ability or not being able to express emotions very well, not being able to express thoughts and feelings. They may also experience low motivation and a lack of pleasure. Some people who have schizophrenia may also have cognitive deficiencies, such as problems with memory and recall, issues involving mental skills and memory span, attention, verbal skills, and other mental functions. But let me say, every single one of these symptoms may or may not affect somebody with schizophrenia. Just like with anything, it's an individual experience, and it can be vastly different in the way that it develops per individual. Everyone's experience will be a little bit different, so you don't have to have every single one of these symptoms in order to have schizophrenia. However, it is quite common for people with schizophrenia to experience functional decline, and this can affect people with dissociative identity disorder too. We may find it harder to work or create lasting social relationships, and even organisation. Just simple things like that can be very difficult, which has a big impression on your life. You wouldn't think that such little things could have such a massive influence on the way somebody is able to express themselves and go about living as they wish to, but a long-lasting period of functional decline is generally a strong symptom of both dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia. But of course, when it comes to every disorder, there are people who are high functioning and people who are low functioning and people who are somewhere in the middle. So it's completely possible to have either dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia and be very, very high functioning. That means able to get a job, able to organise, having very strong, long-lasting relationships with people who are important to you. Just because you have or suspect that you may have dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia doesn't mean that your life is over and that you'll be unable to achieve the things that you want to achieve, especially if you have good treatment and therapy, because there are options out there to help you with both of these disorders. And although, yes, they are very, very different, they are both extremely misunderstood by society and people who are otherwise uneducated on the topic. So, there are things that are in common between individuals who have DID or schizophrenia, but the illnesses themselves form and develop in very, very different ways. Just like with dissociative identity disorder, you can't catch schizophrenia. There does seem to be a few different ways that schizophrenia can develop. We aren't super duper sure right now. There's still a lot of research going into this, but it does seem that evidence is pointing towards a hereditary link. So if somebody in your family has schizophrenia, you are more likely to develop it. It may be something to do with a recessive gene, but like I said, there's still a lot of research going into it. And it's the same for dissociative identity disorder. You can't catch these disorders because they're not illnesses, they're not colds. You can't get schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder from having a bang to the head or having a particularly bad flu or anything like that. In order to develop dissociative identity disorder, a child before the ages of 7 to 9 must experience repeated trauma. And it needs to be before those ages of 7 to 9, as that is when the personality fully coalesces into one. So if there is repeated trauma before the personality integrates, then the mind can say, no, can't deal with this, can't leave this behind and pretend it doesn't happen and live a normal life because it was so traumatic. So what happens is the mind puts up an amnesic wall, which means that the mind is separated into, let's say, 2 parts. So on either side of this amnesic wall, no memory can be shared. So one part of the mind will have the memory of this trauma and the other part won't. And the part without is then able to go ahead and live daily life without awareness of this trauma having happened to the child. But the part on the other side of the wall will have that memory. So as the child grows, these 2 parts of the mind will develop as separate individuals. We already know, because of how they developed, that they have their own memories. They will have their own experiences in life. They can make their own friends. They will develop their own opinions based on their experiences, their own views on the world, their own tastes, their own reactions to the world around them. They develop as different people, just like any other child would develop. And of course, when it comes to dissociative identity disorder, you can have many, many, many alters. Our system personally has 24, so more than 2 is fine. But just like with schizophrenia, you can't catch dissociative identity disorder. So that was another Debunking DID episode for you. In Debunking DID, we debunk all the inaccurate information and stigmas that come with dissociative identity disorder and try to shine a light on what it really means and what is the true reality of having a life with dissociative identity disorder. And every single piece of information will be linked down below in the description. As always, all our Debunking DID episodes are scientific and have lots and lots of links to studies and evidence that I've drawn this information from. So if you want to do your own research, please, 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 I must encourage you to do that. This stuff is very, very interesting and you can find it all in the description below. So if you are interested in checking out our series of Debunking DID, you can find all the links at the top, and we have a Debunking DID playlist as well if you're interested and would like to check that out. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to watch more. We'd love to be able to continue bringing you this kind of content. And thank you so much to our wonderful patrons who give us the ability to do this by donating a few dollars a month. Every single person who has donated from Patreon has allowed us to be able to devote more time to bringing you this content. So big shout out to all our patrons. Thank you so much. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, we have some really exciting rewards, so you can find all the links to that down below as well. And I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Have a lovely day. Loads of love, everybody. Bye.